Kingdom Hearts Days has the largest playable cast of characters in the series, a lot of them being super interesting and super fun to play as, and others being a bit more on the silly side. For those not in the know, Days has this completely separate game mode called Mission Mode, where you can play with up to 4 other players, replaying missions from the single player campaign at an increased difficulty to match the number of players. Most people have sadly never had the chance to fully play this special game mode, myself included, but that will soon change as I, along with my wife and many other Kingdom Hearts fans, will be attending Kingdom Hearts Reconnect this July, and the official account for the event recently put out a PSA to all attendees to bring their copies of the game along with their own DS system of choice. Now, I know a lot of people haven't played the game. Even less of you have properly dabbled too much in mission mode with the other characters. So today, I'm going to give you the rundown on all 20 of them to maybe help you decide who to main and what builds you might want to try to really up your game. Now, before we really get into this, I need to tell you by what parameters this tier list is based on. Just like other aspects of Days gameplay, certain characters in the game will be better than others on different kinds of missions and different fights, and also, when the developers were making this game, they forgot to properly balance the game for single player, so most of the characters are at the same strength they would be if you were playing them with 1 to 3 other players at a time. So, my guess might be as good as yours, as to exactly how good they are, in a team setting. To make sure I'm giving everyone their just desserts, I went and tested all of them against the 3 final bosses, Saiak, Xion, and Riku, as well as several other missions that focused more on fighting groups of Heartless or other bosses that aren't almost completely immune to magic. I also made sure to grade them not only by their most broken move, the Limit Break, but by how good their overall kit is and how effective they are on those different kinds of missions. I also made sure to try and change up each character's build to better suit their playstyle, as some of them are more of a magic caster or straight up damage dealer, but just to save me the trouble of explaining it again and again, I almost always had each character use either Zero Gear or Pandora's Gear. And before I forget, I am proud to say that this channel has its very first sponsor in the form of Fresh Faces 3, a Kingdom Hearts 2 randomizer tournament hosted by Roromaniac for charity, designed for casual players, beginners, and even brand new players who have never played before but are interested in joining the Kingdom Hearts 2 randomizer scene. I participated in Fresh Faces last year, and while I scored dead last, I still had an amazing time. It's the perfect chance to join the Kingdom Hearts community in celebrating a new way to play one of the greatest games in the series. And for each of you that participates, a $5 donation to the charity will be made. And better yet, if you sign up for the tournament using my creator code KEY, all lowercase, that donation increases to $750, which will help us reach our $1,000 goal even quicker. And Roro said they'd buy me a Kit Kat, so I kinda get something out of it too. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below and join Fresh Faces 3. Goofy has by far the worst toolkit in the game, but that's not to say he's completely useless. In fact, none of the characters are inherently unplayable, it's just that some clearly had more thought put into them than others. Besides some slight changes to general stats, all of his shields besides 2 have the exact same combos, and they're honestly pretty awkward, as befits Goofy's style of fighting. He does a punch with his shield, followed by a short spin into one final charging uppercut. Pretty solid, but it can be easily interrupted. Pandora's Gear transforms Goofy's shield into Vexon's Frozen Pride, which is Goofy's only magic-focused weapon. It grants you a plus 25 to your overall magic, and an additional 5 for its upgrade of Pandora's Gear Plus. Equipping ability units to it will unlock Magic Bracer and Blizzard finish abilities to match the theme of Vexon's icy powers. This gear also adds an extra hit to his air combo, which is appreciated because overall, the biggest reason Goofy is so low on the list is because his air combos are just kinda awful. And his magic stats are like the lowest out of everyone, which is a shame because magic is extremely good in this game. Thankfully, his final and most important weapon, the Dream Shield, which you get by equipping the Zero Gear, is the only weapon you should really be using for this character in my honest opinion. This gear upgrades his standard attack combo into his signature Goofy Tornado. By mashing A, you can wail on your opponent in a constant spinning motion until eventually he belly flops onto them for his finisher. I find this is really effective against smaller Heartless like Shadows, but against bosses it kinda feels ineffective because his finisher comes out so slow. You can remedy this by doing an air combo, which is only 2 hits, but it's sort of janky and hard to aim correctly against characters with smaller hitboxes like Saiak's. When it comes to panel setup, you should definitely lean into a critical build, because his defense is stupidly good all on its own. Equip Critical Sun and any variation of ability and sight units to the 0 gear. For his defense, I like having a perfect block, block counter, or round block, but you should definitely experiment with all the different kinds of block panels to better fit your playstyle. But besides all that, just have every level up equipped and fill out what's left of potions and magic if you feel like it. Lastly, Goofy's Limit Break teamwork is surprisingly really good. You can hold down the A button to charge up his shield, and when it's released, he will shoot forward, destroying all in his path. It works pretty damn great against both bosses and large sums of Heartless. The only major downside is that it's really hard to aim, but otherwise I'd say it's one of the stronger limit breaks in the game. For some closing thoughts, I feel like Goofy, despite being at the bottom of my list, is still a pretty strong fighter when you use him correctly. It might take you longer to beat the really heavy hitters, but his strong defense will keep even beginners from dying instantly. But still, he's D tier, and D tier is D tier. Donald Duck makes up the other half of D tier on this list at number 19. Like Goofy, he excels primarily in one stat only. Instead of defense, his speciality is, of course, magic. This fact alone places him well above Goofy already, since, as I've stated before, magic is simply on another level in Days, which is why you absolutely want to base your build around it. I'm talking every single magic level multiplier, magic cast multiplier, as many high ethers as you can fit, and of course a ring that specializes in magic as the cherry on top. I recommend the Imperial Crown for its Magic Finale ability, or the Rune Ring for its plus 20 to your overall magic stat. But just be aware that the Rune Ring comes with some pretty nasty side effects. Just like with Goofy, Pandora's Gear changes Donald's weapon to fit a playstyle that's opposite of his speciality, transforming it to look like Lexius's Centurion. It gives a nice boost to his overall strength and defense, and the combos for it also somewhat mimic how Lexius swings his. It's not a terrible option, but if you're wanting to play a strength-based character, you might as well just go and play Lexius himself. 0 Gear transforms his weapon into the Dream Rod from Kingdom Hearts 1 to complement Goofy's Dream Shield. It grants the highest boost to his magic and strength, and with some ability units attached, you can get 3 of the 4 different magic-based finishers, which can help you out if for some reason you just happen to run out of magic. His Limit Break Fantasia is, in my opinion, a bit on the weak side, as the hitbox makes it feel like you need to be right on top of your opponent for it to hit. It still does decent damage when it does hit, but there are other limit breaks in the game that have a much better area of effect. Overall, Donald's strength lies in his ability to deal consistent damage with his magic at a high rate and also from a safe distance. However, he does fall short, get it, in the realm of dealing fast physical damage. He honestly still gets pretty evenly matched with Goofy in my opinion, and honestly the two could be interchangeable in their ranking depending on if you prefer magic or strength. I have a feeling if you're the kind of person that likes the joke character on any roster, that you will definitely lean into these two. Okay, this one physically pained me. Ziggbar is easily one of the coolest and most important members of Organization 13, one of my favorites in fact, and yet somehow he ranks so low. And why? Well, you see, there are two very important things to know about Ziggbar. Number 1, ammo. Playing as Ziggbar requires you to stop and reload your weapons after exhausting all of your ammo. No other character in the game has to do anything like this, which hinders your gameplay and often leaves you helpless. Ziggbar actually has two different kinds of weapons. His standard gunslinger type, where he dual wields his arrow guns like we usually see him do in cutscenes, and the second type is where he combines the two, turning them into an arrow sniper rifle type weapon. The gunslinger type is sadly pretty inaccurate a lot of the time. Even after trying out all of the different gears, I couldn't really find one that didn't just sort of lock on half the time and was also halfway decent. So you're stuck missing your shots like half of the time. The sniper type is more easy to aim, and a lot of them tend to fire burst shots that do great damage at close and mid-range alike. So then, is sniper the better choice? Well, yes and no. The trade-off for bigger bursts of damage is that you actually have to reload more often because of his burst shots, and the sniper-type weapons already tend to have less ammo than the gunslingers to begin with. Gunslingers are harder to be accurate with, and they mostly do chip damage because of his lower crit rate. Even with all of the sight units equipped combined with his low accuracy, it's just really hard to do big damage at a consistent rate with him. So then, why have I placed him above the 2 half-pints aside from my own bias? Well, it's primarily because of his range. When you finally master the distance needed to consistently land hits, he's actually not too bad. Combine this with some Aurora, Blizzara, and other magic to keep enemies away, and you can do pretty well against most opponents. Not to mention his limit break critical snipe puts you into a third-person shooter mode that's very reminiscent of the move he uses in his Kingdom Hearts 2 boss fight, which I think is just super cool. It's incredibly strong and surprisingly pretty easy to aim. Just don't get too comfortable staying in that same spot for too long and you'll do just fine. For weapons, there's actually a few that I can recommend. Aside from the usual 2, Double Tap, which is Crisis Gear, can go toe-to-toe with even the likes of Zero Gear in terms of raw damage and output. It just doesn't have the ammo to match. If you want a sniper-type weapon, your best bet is Cupid's Arrow, the Champion's Gear, which fires a burst of 3 shots. You can also leap into the air and rain down fire from above and turn it into Gunslinger mode when you do so. There's also Stardust, which has the highest magic-based stats if you're interested in leaning heavy into the magic side of things. But other than that, you just kinda have the usual Pandora's Gear, which transforms them into his final weapon, which is my personal favorite, and Zero Gear, which has the most ammo, but also suffers the most in terms of accuracy. In the end, Ziggbar has a steep learning curve. To the casual player, I don't really recommend playing him too much, except on certain situations. If you really try and build your panel setup to fit the occasion of whatever mission you plan on doing, he can be a worthwhile character to play. And hey, maybe he's better as a complementary character when playing with others. I don't really know what that's like. Well, at least not yet. Alright, I know Demix has his fans, but come on. He's said himself so many times that he's just not cut out for combat. Demix plays pretty much exactly how you picture it in your brain. He skips around while strumming on his guitar. He'll whack opponents with it in different ways, depending on which weapon or gear you use. But honestly, with him, the only real options are the 2 default choices that we've been going on. His ground combo is a simple 7-hit combo that's oddly reminiscent of his physical combos during his boss fight in Kingdom Hearts 2, but obviously it isn't as strong as you can see here. His air combo sees him strumming away, sending out waves of sound that have a pretty wide area of effect that I find pretty useful against ground enemies, and it also feels like it lands critical hits more easily, so I tend to default to that. For his build, you again want to lean into a well-balanced magic and critical build, with auroras to send your opponents flying for maximum critical damage while they're in the air. Against the big 3, he feels weaker, barely doing much more than chip damage. The better option of the 2 is definitely Pandora's Gear for Demix, as it's more simple 4-hit ground combo and a more dramatic air combo with a greater range. But even so, I wouldn't exactly recommend using him for more than going on a general Heartless Hunt or Recon, which we all know he's best at. Maybe he performs better when playing with others, but solo he just feels really lacking in overall damage, which is why, just like with Ziggbar, you want to lean more into your magic and spacing yourself out from your opponents. His limit break, known simply as wave gigs, is also a tad confusing to the average person. Like, I genuinely forgot that in order to make it work, you have to try and time your button presses to match the tempo of the flashing circle displayed around him as he strums his guitar. By doing so, you call forth powerful pillars of water that again seem to harken back to one of his moves from his Kingdom Hearts 2 boss fight, but I don't know, for some reason it feels like it just doesn't work that great against Saiak or Riku, but then again, I am not the best at pulling off these very gimmicky limit breaks. Overall, Demix isn't the greatest choice of a character, but at least he does more consistent damage than Ziggbar. Lux Sword is an interesting character in the sense that he's not terrible, but he's also just barely better than Demix. He uses his cards to push, slash, and juggle his enemies into the air, with most of his weapons excelling at stringing together very flashy air and ground combos. He's a worthwhile character to main, but a more difficult one to master. You'll want to carry a balanced build with a slight preference for critical hits, because his combos are honestly consistent enough to make it worth doing so. As always, the recommended gear is still Pandora's gear or Zero gear, but who am I kidding? You're gonna play with whichever weapon looks best to you, so just have fun with it. The only major complaint I have against Lux Sword, and the reason I said he was harder to master, is because of his obnoxious limit break. Jackpot. Like with Demix, the developers designed his limit to be very gimmicky. For the initial limit break, he calls forth one card that has one of two symbols. The first is Roxis' X symbol. If this symbol is the one that you randomly selected, Lux Sword will take damage. The other symbol is an 8-point asterisk, which, when selected, deals damage to your opponent. When he swaps to the final limit, it will change to 2 cards simultaneously, which will make it so you can do either double damage to yourself or to your target enemy. It also adds the third symbol, a heart. If you get double hearts, it will send out the most powerful wave of magic, and it's honestly so broken. I know there's probably a way to master the timing of this attack, but for the life of me, I haven't really figured it out completely. So, best of luck to you if Lux Sword ends up being your chosen character. I know I haven't, much to say about him in comparison to the rest, but he's really not too complicated outside of his limit, so once you master it, you'll be playing the Gambler of Fate like a pro. Zaldin's not actually that bad either. He strikes a solid balance of magic and attack power. While he does fine against bosses like Riku, he shines brightest when it comes to crowd control, since a lot of his combos are great for sweeping and impaling opponents with his 6 lances. With Zaldin, I feel like having a build with a good balance of magic and critical is essential, but if you prefer to lean to one side or the other, this is what I recommend. If you'd like to build him with more magic at its center, arm him with a lot of fire, thunder, and especially arrow magic, along with the Omega Gear Plus, which gives him the highest boost to his magic, as well as an arrow finisher when equipped with an ability unit. Honestly, this gear might be my favorite to use with him, as it's also a pretty solid combo loop. But of course, the 2 gears that still outrank the others is still the Zero gear and Pandora's gear in terms of overall greatness in the physical strength and critical hit departments. You really can't go wrong with these 2 no matter which character you use, which is why a large part of why these characters are ranked where they are is based on how well they perform with these gears equipped. During combat, I try to cast a ton of arrow magic to trigger the air toss status effect, and then follow it up with a fire or thunder spell, or even just a quick air combo for maximum damage. This kind of strategy works with a lot of balance type characters on the roster, but I like using it a lot with Zaldin since he specializes in this element according to the game's lore. His limit break Dragoon Storm is overall pretty good too, creating a whirlwind with his lances. You can mash A to absolutely obliterate surrounding opponents. When it gets to his final limit, he swaps into a classic Dragoon move of leaping into the air and then crashing down onto foes with incredible force. In all honesty, if we were to base this ranking purely on how well characters can handle their large numbers of smaller enemies at once, he'd rank pretty high in my opinion. But because he just doesn't quite do well enough against late game bosses in my opinion, this is where we're going to keep him. Vexon is, as you might expect, a heavy-duty magic build. He excels at blocking and defending against physical damage while dishing out a vast quantity of spells most comfortably at mid-range. His physical damage is nothing too spectacular. Like Goofy, his blows come out pretty slow and are often quickly cancelled out before you can get to your finisher, rendering them pretty pointless to try and attempt, so this character was made for people to take a position behind close-up fighters. His limit break, Diamond Dust, is honestly pretty underrated too. He propels 3 icebergs from his shield that can smash against multiple enemies at once, and then it transitions to become a more powerful, larger iceberg that appears right beneath whichever foe you are locked onto, that also deals continuous damage for a brief period of time when struck. The only thing you need to be aware of is the distance between you and your target when using it, as being too close will make the first part of the limit break completely miss. Also, the fact that Vexon is almost purely a magic-based character does make him not so great against the 3 endgame bosses, as their magic immunity is just way too high. Although I don't see why he can't play more of a support role when you're playing with others. You also gotta remember that all of my rankings of these characters are determined by my playtime alone, and it could be completely different in a team setting. To get the most out of Vexon's build, as always, we equip Pandora or Zero Gear, and with it, I actually recommend giving him just one ability unit and supplementing 2 of the sight units with magic units instead. This is a personal choice, but I just think leaning really heavily into his magic builds is more than worth it in the long run, which is why you also want to come prepared with magic casts to spare. I like to lean into his icy theme by giving him mostly Blizzard and Blizzara spells, but bring at least a few of all types. Simply put, Vexon is a character that was made for a calculating and magic-minded person, which is why he places so high in my book as someone who is a firm magic is broken in days believer. Now, Zexian is another magic caster type that masterfully wields his lexicon with a high crit bonus but a low crit rate. Because of his high crit rate and good mid-range combos, he lands just above Vexon in terms of overall greatness. His basic combos vary, but his Zero Gear is a simple 4 hits and his aerial is 3. While I don't recommend relying on his high crit bonus due to his abysmal base crit percent, you can do your best to bridge the gap with all sight units and Critical Sun, and despite the lower crit rate, I actually recommend using Pandora's gear instead if you're going the more physical route. His Limit Break, Meteor Mirage, is an area of effect type that rains down balls of violet energy onto the field, decimating everything around Zexian, who will float stationary above the ground. His final limit calls down these meteors at a faster rate and a larger size. You can also pause the limit at any time by pressing B, so that you aren't always so vulnerable. But because you remain stationary while it's in use, a lot of people tend to underestimate just how strong his Limit Break really is. Because you have the ability to pause it, you can actually leap into the air away from most grounded enemies while you use the Limit Break, making you almost untouchable to all but the ones that can float or fly. Just make sure you aren't too high, or the meteors will actually completely miss sometimes. The final limit meteors will land no matter what, because they have a bigger range, but yeah, just be careful about that. All that said, I feel like you should still lean more into his overall magic ability, so instead of all sight units, maybe you should equip some more magic units and have a similar setup to Vexon. Pack up some high ethers, and maybe toss in the rune ring if you're feeling the plus 20 to your magic is worth the risk of random status effects. Though, maybe Critical Sun is still your best option after all. Zexian is a character you should play a lot like Vexon, but perhaps if you don't like Vexon, then this is the character for you. He's a solid pick that performs well on any mission where the target doesn't have almost complete magic immunity, and shines best when used creatively. Marluchia is, in my eyes, a balanced type fighter through and through with an admirable level of magic proficiency, but his affinity for critical percent and crit bonus makes him a heavy physical fighter as well. With Zero Gear, he dishes out a 4-hit ground combo, with his last 2 hits both technically qualifying as finishers, which means that if you have his crit rate at almost 50% like I do, then you'll almost always do big damage if you complete your combo, making the Brick Wall ability immeasurably helpful to have. But because we want our boy to have as much critical bonus as possible, we once again equip our trusty Critical Sun ring. Unlike our magic types who will carry an absurd number of high ethers, I strongly recommend instead focusing more on increasing the number of times you can use your Limit Break, as it's where most of his big damage will stem from. Marluchia's Limit Break is called Bloom Out, another area of effect type that is much more fitting for Marluchia than anyone else I've seen so far, you know, what with his weapon undeniably having the longest reach. The way it works is by holding down the A button until a dark ring appears around Marluchia. Think of it like Link's spin attack from Zelda, where once you let go, he will spin in a circle, cutting down all who stand within it. This Limit Break is so unbelievably broken that it even one-shots certain smaller enemies in the game. Kingdom Hearts Wiki has a list that I don't care to repeat, but if you're curious, here it is. That said, don't neglect your magic either. I recommend carrying around some Blizzaras to help freeze your opponents in place so you can maximize your damage output with his Scythe and Limit Break, but also maybe an Aroga or 3 for the cool factor. I know a lot of you are really happy to see Marluchia make it all the way up here near the top 10, although he's not quite there, because goodness knows he's got a lot of fans. He's got a good kit, and he's really fun to play, so I hope anyone who decides to play with him will enjoy their time with the game more. know that a lot of seasoned Days enjoyers are probably wondering why I've placed Larkxine so high when her damage output is less than desirable when compared to a lot of the other heavy hitters we're about to see from here on out, but allow me to explain. Larkxine is, much like with Marluchia, a character that's main strength lies within her limit break. Without it, I don't know if I'd place her up this high. She's easily got the fastest attacks in the game right alongside Ziggbar, but in her case you can easily consistently land hits with her. While they mostly do chip damage, I managed to do pretty okay with her standard combos when giving her 0 gear and 4 sight units. The issue is her ground combo is so long that it takes forever for her finisher to activate, so I believe the best option might be to try and perform aerial combos as often as possible. Yes, I know her damage is kind of minuscule at times, but she does pretty well against bosses like Saiak and Riku because of how fast she is. For her build, I recommend leaning into her critical hit rate, because God knows she needs it, and as a challenge to you, try to only equip her with Thunder type magic to truly represent. If that's a bit too much for you though, throw in some Curas and some other spells as well so you can do some good magic stacking. And what about her limit break? Well, think of Voltic Rush as a more electric, Larkxine flavored Sonic Rave from Kingdom Hearts 1. Her limit starts with her cloaked in static electricity, allowing you to attack even more quickly than before. The attacks deal much more damage. Mashing the A button as many times as possible is recommended. Then, during her final limit, she transitions into the lightning itself, dashing up to 2 or 3 times into the enemies, absolutely destroying them. This limit is extremely easy to control and so satisfying to use. While Larkxine isn't that strong by herself, I feel like in a multiplayer setting she can really shine and surprise you. Just make sure not to get too cocky, read the enemy attack patterns, and above all else, don't simp too hard. Axel is a naturally gifted, balanced type fighter that anyone can easily pick up and play without much issue with understanding what his playstyle is like. He's a close to mid-range fighter that wields his chakrams with swift attacks and deadly precision. Axel's base ground combo with the 0 gear is a quick and easy 1-2-3 combo, with the finisher having him actually throw his chakrams straight ahead, so you can even hit enemies behind whichever one you're currently targeting. Similarly, his air combo is also 3 hits, but with his finisher swing, it goes out in a circular motion that can catch multiple enemies at once, making him extremely versatile against single enemies and multiple foes alike. One of his only weak points that I could find is that I wish his block came out a little bit faster. Maybe it's just me, but I often found myself getting smacked to all hell because his block just wasn't there in time. So I recommend equipping him with some block level up panels on top of either Fire Block or Perfect Block. Of course, no Axel build is complete without equipping all kinds of fire spells at max level, so be sure to bring a ton to really feel like the Flamehead in battle. But don't sleep on his physical damage either. In fact, this is one of those rare cases where I might actually recommend you try using Pandora's Gear over 0 gear for a character. In Axel's case, both the standard Pandora's Gear and Pandora's Gear Plus both come with some really useful abilities. Both have Fire Finish when you equip one ability panel and Critical Boost when you equip 2. That already makes it worth trying this gear out, but if you want to equip a third one to Pandora's Gear, you can get the Alive and Kickin' ability, which makes you stagger enemies with every attack when you're at full HP, and Pandora's Gear Plus has Grand Slam, where you deal more critical hits when your HP is super low. Both are worthwhile, but even if you opt for only 1 or 2, it's a solid option in my opinion, and a lot more fun than just a slightly higher crit rate. But hey, that's just me. Axel's limit break is called Explosion, and it certainly lives up to its name. Like Vexon's limit, it's a good range type attack where Axel tosses a chakram that's shrouded in flames straight ahead. The range on it is a little bit weird and requires some practice, but when it swaps to his final limit, he will chuck both of his chakrams at once for an even stronger, more explosive hit. A very solid and straightforward limit break that anyone can master with ease. I'm sure Axel fans everywhere, myself included, are happy to see him this high up on the tier list, but just make sure you let everyone else have a turn playing as him too, okay? Some of you may find it weird why the leader of the organization placed as low as he has, while others who have actually played the game a lot will wonder how he managed to get up here at all. Zenness is a close to mid-range fighter who's, for the most part, well balanced overall. He's a good character that's a little tricky to nail down, as depending on who's playing as him and what mission you're using him on, he can appear to be either really good or pretty damn awful. His ground combo is a 1-strike, 2-strike, followed by him shooting 3 small lasers or ethereal blades from his hand. His aerial combo basically turns him into a helicopter, swinging both of his long weapons in a circular motion that can combo multiple enemies into the air at once. Both combos are excellent for crowd control and taking out weaker to mid-range enemies without breaking a sweat. His main weakness lies with him not being the best against faster boss-type enemies like Saiak's, but even so, I was able to tank him due to his defense and HP being pretty damn decent. For his limit break, All Vanity, he engulfs himself in a ball of energy that deals damage upon touch, so you can get away with rushing into enemies almost worry-free. You can still potentially take the random hit or two due to Dazed Jank, but for the most part, most non-boss enemies can't hurt you much while you're in this stage, making it the only defensive and offensive limit in the game. For his final limit, he will start shooting out long beams of null energy which can be aimed with your D-pad, but I prefer to just sweep them all around as it can easily beat multiple enemies at once. His build is a relatively simple one. His magic is decent, so pack a few of your favorite spells, but you definitely want to lean into using his limit break as much as possible, so if you're planning to main him, I recommend stocking up on a ton of limit recoveries so you can maintain the Ball of Death status at all times. I also recommend having the Master's Circle equipped if you want to activate your limit faster, but because his critical rate is only average at best, you should still try to lean into the default of Critical Sun if you want to. Oh, and Zero Gear is honestly the only worthwhile weapon for him if you have it already unlocked. I tried Pandora's Gear, and it just felt a little weak in my opinion, so yeah, Zero Gear for the guy who gives zero fucks. Zenness is a fighter that I believe can perform excellently in a team setting. He's got a good kit for handling multiple enemies at once, and while he might not handle any of the big 3 bosses in the game too well on his own, he might prove to be eternally great in all other kinds of missions, which is why I have chosen to rank him this high. I hope you enjoyed playing as the Lord of the Organization as much as I do. Dual Wield Roxis, the epitome of cool, the lord of aura farming, every Roxis fanboy's dream character. Ever since I first saw the Kingdom Hearts 1 secret ending with Roxis wielding 2 Keyblades at once to the tune of Evanescence, I was forever changed. Later on, I come to find out that it's totally possible to play as Dual Wield Roxis, but only in mission mode and on the final day of the main story. So to play as him, you simply add 3 ability units to your Zero Gear and bam! He's there, kind of like a secret character. He wields Oathkeeper and Oblivion simultaneously and feels totally badass. At least he does when it's the story mode. You see, those tricky devs at Hand, the company that developed Days, wanted you to feel as cool as possible, cutting down wave upon wave of Neo Shadows like how we see in the secret movie, so they maxed out his strength stats just for that one mission to do so. But the moment you take him into any of the missions in mission mode, he's suddenly barely even an A-tier character. Why is this? Well, it's because of the ability units that you equipped in order to play as him. There's less space to put those very good sight units to maximize his crit rate in, and there's also just a big balancing issue in mission mode that was never fully addressed. When I realized this, I felt so lied to, so betrayed. Look at how they massacred my boy. Well, enough of my rambling. He's still pretty decent. You can equip Critical Sun and 1 sight unit, and still go pretty ham with the most fun combos in the game. I still feel cool, even though I'm barely doing any chip damage. His one major saving grace is his limit break, Magic Hour, the only other reason he managed to score this high. His limit harkens back to his Kingdom Hearts 2 boss fight where Roxis will point his Keyblades to the sky, calling down beams of light at random to strike at Heartless beneath him. When they hit, they do damage on par with some of the best limit breaks in the game, but the issue is that the beams are random. You can try to lock onto an enemy while in your limit, and it kind of feels like they hit more often, but otherwise they just go wherever they want, so it's inconsistent at best. I wish I could defend him and bump him up even more, but sadly, my GOAT in his most perfect form lands squarely at number 8. Sora, the main character of the Kingdom Hearts series, and the final unlockable character in the game. And he's one of the most bland characters to play as in the cast. Maybe I'll sound a little bit salty when I say this, but why would I want to play as Sora when literally anyone else is more appealing? Sure, his stats are all well-rounded and equal to Roxis and Xion, but for some reason he just feels worse to play as? Maybe it's because we're stuck playing as Kingdom Hearts 1 Sora in a KH2 level Roxis world. But ramblings aside, let's just get into the details. Sora's main combo is a 1-2-3 hit with his third hit turning into a backhand strike. His air combo is basically the same as his Hurricane Blast from Kingdom Hearts 1, where he does a few flips in mid-air with his Keyblade extended in a spiraling cut. Oddly enough, I find his ground combo is much better as it gets his finisher out more quickly, and because his crit rate and bonus are so good, it makes it all the more worth it. His build is however you want to build him, honestly. Build him how you typically build Roxis, for all I care. His limit break is Ragnarok, but not the same as Ragnarok as the one that Xion's boss fight uses, which auto-locks onto you and chases you to the ends of the earth, because why would they do something as nice as that? Sora's Ragnarok has him leap into the air and shoot off beams of light that do auto-lock, but also fade pretty quickly, so make sure you're not too far from your target. The move can also be charged by holding down A and then unleashing it when it flashes white, thereby releasing more lasers than a standard shot. When it's time for Final Limit, it changes into a trio of more powerful lasers that do not auto-lock, but instead shoot in a straight line ahead of you, and this is a really powerful move, so try not to miss it. He's a solid pick, and is just barely outside the top of my tier list with the final 6 characters. That said, it's time to get into the real heavy hitters. These last few, for the most part, can be ranked in just about any order, excluding the final 2, and remember, for me, please, everything I've been saying and will say during this video is just my personal opinion. So let's get into it, starting with Saiak is everyone's favorite member of middle management and the character with the absolute highest critical rate in the game, making him an easy pick for anyone who loves close quarters combat. He can survive pretty well against most attacks, has a simple build, and by far one of the highest damage outputs of any character we've covered so far. His combo, while using the Zero Gear, is an easy 1-2-3 swing with a finisher that absolutely melts HP due to its, again, really high crit rate and crit bonus. Because of his already outstanding crit rate, why wouldn't we try and take it as high as it can go by making our weapon armed with every sight unit imaginable? Well, while that's a perfectly viable option and one that feels amazing, you do have a choice to equip some ability units in place of them. Equipping one will give you the combo boost ability that makes your damage higher the longer your combo goes. And equipping 2 gives you critical boost, that makes it so that any of your hits have the potential to be a critical hit and not just your finisher. For the rest of his build, just like with Sora, you can do what you want freely to suit your playstyle, as you do with any character you want. But above all, you want to prioritize damage output in close quarters. For someone like Saiak, who will mainly be wanting to do standard combos, I recommend getting some good block commands like round block or perfect block. These are a good way with any character for someone who's always up in the enemy's face, and it's much more important to have these so you can block more quickly, as you might not always be able to dodge or get away from an enemy attack sometimes. But honestly, my main and only grievance with him is that his limit break, Berserk, as powerful as it is, can be really inconsistent at times. Saiak enters his Berserk state and immediately starts attacking wildly, swinging his claymore in circles along the ground, charging uncontrollably. You can press A to make him leap into the air and deal bursts of damage and then change direction, and the area of effect of each swing and burst increases when he enters Final Limit, but it's just so hard to properly aim this attack, making it pretty situational, but I will say it might do really well when facing multiple hordes of enemies. Some people I know from the Melamix server, the ones who have developed the version of Days I play for all of my videos, would probably disagree with me and say you just need to practice with it, and I will say that with practice, any of the limits are totally viable. But to the average player, this one in particular might be a little frustrating, which is why Saiak takes his rightful place in the number 6 position. Riku is without a shadow of a doubt one of the most fun characters to play as, at least for me. He's quick, he hits hard, his combos are fun and precise, and he has 2 equally viable Keyblades to use. Pandora's Gear gives him Oblivion, which has actually a higher base crit rate than Zero Gear, Again, this is only with Riku, but it makes it worth using in my opinion, especially if you're worried about your defense. Zero Gear gives him his signature Way to Dawn from Kingdom Hearts 2, and while you could give him all sight units, he's a lot like Saiak's in the sense that having 3 ability units is pretty fun and worthwhile. One ability unit gives him Vitality Surge, which makes Riku stronger at full HP. 2 of them unlocks Vitality Barrier, which makes it so you only take 1/3 of the usual damage when at full HP, and best of all, having 3 will give you Alive and Kickin', the absolute most broken ability in the game that lets you stagger enemies with every hit, so long as they have the ability to be staggered. All of these abilities make it so you feel rewarded for being untouchable in battle, which is a very Riku thing to do in my opinion. His strength again lies primarily in his overall crit rate, so having Critical Sun and your usual well-rounded build is perfect for his playstyle. His limit break is Darkstorm. When activated, you can mash A to do multiple hits of Sonic Rave Cloaked in Darkness, and then for his final limit, he will swap to Zantetsuken, which will imbue his blade with the power of light. It's a really easy limit to control, and really fun too. His final limit works very similarly to Roxis' base limit break, so it should be easy to pick up even as a newer player. Bottom line, Riku is super fun to play, super easy to learn, and above all,
Riku is a sexy guy. He's just a sexy guy.
I bet you didn't really expect to see old Big and Burly up so high. This dude speaks like 4 sentences throughout the whole series, and somehow he made his way into the top 5? Well, I have just 2 words for that. Raw damage. He boasts the highest base HP, strength, and defense with a pretty high critical bonus as a cherry on top. His ground combo is a simple 1-2-3, which allows his finisher to land much more quickly. Well, quickly by Lexius standards. His air combo is even shorter at just 2 swings, and can I just say, his Zero Gear B combo alternative is just perfect. It's so fun to successfully land. Because of his already absurd strength and defense, I believe that having magic is kind of pointless, but it's always welcome if you have the space for it. I will say that because Lexius is so slow, grinding some challenge missions to get the haste ability panel will be worthwhile, and you absolutely want to have Blizzara to freeze your enemies in place to achieve maximum beatdown proficiency. As in most cases, you want to use Zero Gear for the higher crit rate, but Pandora's Gear is still a fine secondary option. The abilities for Zero Gear on Lexius are interesting, but I believe sticking to all sight panels is the best choice in his case. Best of all, his limit break, Ayers Rock, makes an already stupid strong character unbelievably broken. By mashing A, he will wildly swing his Tomahawk Sword thing in a wide circle, which does okay, pretty decent damage, alright, but the real trick is to hold down the A button so he can power up. If you hold it down until his weapon turns into a boulder and let it rip, he will leap and bring it down crashing straight ahead, dealing unbelievable damage that will honestly make you look twice to make sure you're not dreaming. I mean, just look at how he melts Riku and Saiak. I beat them both in like 30 seconds apiece. Honestly, it might be the most broken limit in the game, but since he's only in the number 5 spot, of course he has a few drawbacks. His speed is less than desirable, and his regular attacks are really slow, so he might struggle against quicker enemies, especially in a 1 versus 1 situation. But in a group setting where multiple people are attacking at once, I believe he could potentially go the entire game without struggling even a little bit. Also, completely off topic, but my wife is so glad one of her crushes made it so high on this list. I don't know how many of my viewers are Lexius fans, but there's nothing more to say. He's broken, so who could possibly beat him out at number 3? Oh, of course it's the rat. Who else did you think it was gonna be? Why would Disney allow anyone in their game to be better than their mascot? He's fast, he's agile, he hits like a truck. Michael Mouse might not appear to deal as much damage as Lexius at times, but he makes up for it in all other areas. His ground combo is a 1-2 swing followed by this figure 8 kind of whirlwind slash thing that can hit multiple targets at once with equal damage and precision as if it were a single one. His air combo is also kind of 3 hits, but the finisher comes out slower, so I actually would recommend doing his ground combo more often if it can be helped. His magic capability is also nothing to scoff at, almost running equal with any other magic caster in the game. So it's fair to say he's the prime example of a balanced type with a limit break to prove it. Mickey's limit break is Faith, an ability that he and his wife Queen Minnie seem to share. By pressing the A button, he will throw out beams of light at his opponent, but honestly they're kind of weak. If you hold them down though, you can charge up a medium-sized beam of light that deals much more damage, and lastly, when you charge it up for his final limit, he calls down an even greater blast of light that is super effective against both Saiak and Riku, and most likely Xion as well. All that is to say, he has little to no weaknesses other than being stagnant when he's charging up his limit break, making it easy to rank him this high. Michael Mouse, you're damn lucky you are the mascot. It should come as no surprise that the main playable character and his exact copy in terms of gameplay take up the number 2 and number 1 spots on this list. When the devs were making Days, they centered most of the enemy stats around how well off Roxis would probably be at the time of his first time on each mission. What they forgot to do was balance the other characters properly to make them viable for single-player expeditions. They gave us 2 separate menus in mission mode for single player and multiplayer, but forgot to change the enemy balancing for the single player, making only the last few I've mentioned even remotely close to these 2. With Roxis being the main character, I already assume everyone knows how to play as him, and if you don't by now, it's basically the same as everyone else in S tier. Critical build or magic build depending on the mission, I don't really care, just use whatever you're most comfortable with. Same goes for Xion, who's basically an echo fighter to Roxis, only slightly nerfed due to, again, the balancing issues. Unless you just completely skipped playing the entire game and are only going to try it out for the multiplayer, then I don't think you need me to say anything further. So yeah, kind of anticlimactic, but this is just how it goes when you're the main characters. I really hope that I managed to get this video out on time for Reconnect. If I didn't, then I'm sorry. I really am. And if you found it helpful for choosing who you do and do not want to play as, then please tell me your favorite in the comments. As always, I've been Key, signing off. I'm gonna get some rest because this video is taking way too long. Peace, see you at Reconnect.